is a intraperitoneal organ, like it will be present inside the peritoneum. Intraperitoneal organ, it is a J-shaped organ, and it is dilated muscular tube. This is esophagus is a muscular tube. Esophagus will like further continue as a dilated muscular tube as a stomach. It is in between the esophagus above and duodenum below. Then you have the parts of the stomach. Cardia, this is the cardia which is present around the esophagus, and this is fundus, a dome shaped structure. This is fundus. Here if you see in X-ray, you will see air bubbles. And this is the body. This is the body, largest and central part. And this is an antrum, like pylorus. Pylorus has canal and antrum region. Then curvatures. You have two curvature. This is a lesser curvature and this is a greater curvature. To the greater curvature, there is a greater omentum attached. To the lesser curvature, there is a lesser omentum attached. And you have two orifice, that is opening. This is a cardiac orifice near the cardiac region, and this is a pyloric orifice near the pylorus part. Then you have ligaments, gastrosplenic ligament which connects stomach into the to the spleen, and gastrophrenic ligament which connects stomach to the diaphragm. And layers of the all GIT you have, that you have mucosa, submucosa, muscularis propria and serosa. In mucosa you have gastric glands and gastric pits, and you have cells called parietal cells, chief cells, mucosal cells, G cells, and enterochromaffin cells. Parietal cell secretes HCl and intrinsic factor. This intrinsic factor is required for vitamin B12 absorption in the ileum. If there is a problem in the parietal cells, there is a decrease in the intrinsic factor which leads to pernicious anemia. Vitamin B12 deficiency causes pernicious anemia. And you have chief cells which secrete pepsinogen. Pepsinogen, upon acted by HCl, it is converted into pepsin, which is required for the digestion of proteins. And mucous cells which secrete mucus, which protects from the acid. G cells secrete gastrin, which enhances acid secretion. And enterochromaffin cells secrete histamine, which also enhances acid secretion. And you have submucosal layer where you see blood vessels, and Meissner's plexus will be there. This Meissner's plexus helps in absorption and secretion. And you have lymphatics in the submucosal layer. After that you have muscularis propria. Usually in all GIT you have inner circular and outer longitudinal, but in stomach you have extra oblique layer in innermost oblique layer, so this will become middle layer. So inner oblique, middle circular, and outer longitudinal layer. Then you have in muscularis propria Auerbach's plexus or myenteric plexus, also known as myenteric plexus, which helps in motility, that is peristalsis. Or you have gastric movements called gastric emptying, peristalsis, churning movement, and other thing. Then the last layer is the serosa, which is outermost peritoneal cover, and the gastric pH, like pH inside the stomach, is 1 to 3 approx, like average of 1 to 3 it will be. In many people 1 3 like that. Then you have blood supply for the stomach. Blood supply by the celiac trunk. For lesser curvature you have right and left gastric artery. For greater curvature you have right and left, near the greater curvature you have right and left gastroepiploic artery. And to the fundus it is by the short gastric arteries, which are the branches of splenic artery. And functions of stomach are absorption, of water, alcohol, and some drugs like aspirin is absorbed because aspirin is acidic. Acidic drugs are absorbed better in acid. So you have pH of 1 to 3 in stomach. So aspirin is better absorbed in the stomach. And you have venous supply, like venous drainage corresponding to the arteries, and finally drain into the portal vein. And regulation of the gastric secretion, you have three phases: cephalic phase, a gastric phase, and intestinal phase. Cephalic phase, it contributes for 30%, gastric 60, and mild from the intestinal. Cephalic means when you hear about the food, when you see the food, when you taste the food, the secretions occurring, this is known as by sense organs. This is known as cephalic phase. And gastric phase, when the food enters into the stomach, and intestinal phase, when the food enters into the intestine. Cephalic phase is via the vagus nerve, regulated by the vagus nerve, whereas gastric phase by the gastrovagal reflex, whereas intestinal phase is mild and inhibited by GIP, CCK, and secretin hormones. Gastric motility, I already told you have three types of motility: the peristalsis, like wave-like contraction, and retropulsion, which is when the food is pushed back when for the proper mixing, when it is not mixed properly, and gastric emptying. The functions of the stomach, I already told: storage, mixing, churning, and it will convert into chyme, which is semi-solid food, and the digestion and secretions of acid, or the functions of stomach. And the capacity of an adult stomach is 1 to 1.5 liter. I told this pepsinogen is secreted by the chief cells, which will be acted upon the HCl and then converted into pepsin, which helps in protein digestion, and it converts into peptides. And you have hormones: gastrin, which increases HCl secretion. This gastrin is secreted by the G cells. And you have D cells, which secrete, like enterochromaffin cells, which secrete histamine, which also enhances gastrin. D cells will like somatostatin will secrete D cells will secrete somatostatin, which decreases the gastric secretion. You have intrinsic factor, which is secreted by the parietal cells, which helps in absorption of vitamin B12 in ileum. If there is a decrease in intrinsic factor, which leads to the vitamin B12 deficiency and causes anemia, this is known as pernicious anemia. And you have nerve supply here. Nerve supply, you have like this one: sympathetic and parasympathetic nerve supply. Parasympathetic, for secretions, it is by the increases secretion and motility by the vagus nerve, 10th cranial nerve. The sympathetic from the T6 to T9 spinal segment, which causes vasoconstriction and decreases the motility. Parasympathetic, when you are very relaxed, during parasympathetic conditions, the digestion is increased, the digestion activity, so secretions and motility is increased. In a sympathetic fight and flight situation, you have no time for the digestion, so like motility is decreased. And you have few gastric conditions called peptic ulcer. You have in peptic ulcer, duodenal ulcer, and the gastric ulcer. Gastritis, inflammation of the stomach, and then pernicious anemia because of B12 deficiency. Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, where there is a stomach glands produced in elsewhere else in ectopic sites and increases HCl secretion. Achlorhydria, where there is no HCl secretion. All these are gastric conditions, like clinical correlation related to like anatomy of the stomach. I told you about the parts of the stomach, like cells present in that, layers of the stomach, and blood supply, like arterial, venous, nerve supply, some gastric conditions, and some functions of some hormones, more functions of stomach, and hormones secreted by this, all those. If you find this video helpful, please do like, share, subscribe to my channel. If you have any suggestions, let me know in the comment section. Thank you.